At 0346 in the cold, early morning darkness, the runway lights of a remote Russian military airfield flickered across the tarmac. A massive Il-76 transport aircraft, worth over $100 million, was being prepared for takeoff. Ground crews moved quickly around it. Fuel hoses were connected. Cargo loaders rolled crates toward its open rear ramp. Russian officers stood near the nose, reviewing paperwork. Everyone at the airfield believed they had complete control of the night. Their radar systems were active. Floodlights covered the perimeter. Watchtowers were manned. Nothing seemed unusual. But in the sky above the field, something small, silent, and invisible to Russian sensors was already circling like a hunter watching its prey. A Ukrainian long-range drone, launched hours earlier from deep behind the front lines, had finally reached its target. The drone's thermal camera showed the heat signature of the giant transport plane clearly. Its engines were still cold, meaning it had not yet begun its warm-up cycle. That made it the perfect moment to strike. The Ukrainian operator monitoring the feed narrowed his focus. The opportunity was rare. Hitting a Russian aircraft on the ground was one thing, but hitting it right before takeoff, just minutes before it became airborne, would send shockwaves across Russia's entire military aviation network. Inside the cockpit, two Russian pilots were completing system checks. They were relaxed. They had flown this route many times before. The Il-76 was scheduled to carry supplies and replacement parts to another base further south. It was part of Russia's attempt to repair the damage caused by months of Ukrainian strikes. What the pilots did not know was that Ukraine had been tracking this aircraft for 3 days. Ukrainian intelligence had intercepted communication logs, watched satellite images, and monitored the aircraft's movement from base to base. The moment it landed at this airfield, the drone team received the green light. Before we continue, if you appreciate these clear, cinematic breakdowns of battlefield operations, make sure you subscribe. Your support helps us bring more accurate updates from the front lines. The drone slowly descended to a lower altitude. It stayed just above the treetops, flying along the edge of the airfield where radar coverage was weakest. The operator controlled every movement with precision. The drone was equipped with a high-explosive warhead designed for maximum damage on impact. Its battery life was limited, and the pilot knew he had only one chance to hit the plane. As the drone approached the runway's western side, the pilot adjusted its heading to line up with the Il-76's massive wing. Damaging the wing would ground the plane permanently. Hitting the fuel tank could cause a catastrophic explosion. At the same moment, on the airfield, a Russian security patrol vehicle drove along the perimeter road. The two soldiers inside were chatting casually. They noticed nothing unusual. The sound of a small electric motor in the air was drowned out by the wind and diesel engines of ground vehicles. The drone slipped past them unnoticed. The Ukrainian operator steadied his hands. He zoomed the camera closer. The enormous silhouette of the Il-76 filled the screen. Its nose pointed down the runway, its wings stretched out like a sleeping giant. At 0350, the drone was less than 700 meters away from the target. The Ukrainian operator adjusted speed and altitude. He checked the wind direction. Everything was perfect. But just then, the unexpected happened. A Russian technician standing near the left wing glanced up and noticed something. A small light flickering in the sky. He squinted, unsure of what he was seeing. Was it a bird? Was it a star? He stared for a moment, puzzled. When the drone closed the last 200 meters, he suddenly realized it was heading straight for the aircraft. He shouted a warning. His voice echoed across the airfield. Soldiers turned. Pilots inside the cockpit looked out the window. But it was already too late. The drone surged forward at maximum speed. The Russian technician ran, waving his arms. Another soldier raised his rifle and fired blindly, but his rounds missed. The Ukrainian operator increased thrust for the final push. The drone dived down toward the wing root, the most vulnerable point on the aircraft's body. With 2 seconds left, the operator locked onto the exact strike point. The screen flashed white. A massive explosion ripped through the aircraft's left side. The entire wing shook. Fire erupted instantly. The shockwave threw nearby workers to the ground. The Il-76's fuel tank ignited in a violent burst, sending flames 10 meters into the air. Shattered metal, burning insulation, and pieces of fuselage scattered across the tarmac. Smoke billowed into the sky, and the sound of the explosion echoed for kilometers. The Russian pilots inside the cockpit were thrown backward by the blast. The windshield cracked. Alarms screamed across the instrument panel. They struggled to escape through the emergency hatch as the flames spread quickly across the aircraft's body. Ground crews shouted orders, trying to direct firefighters toward the burning plane, but the fire was already too intense. The fuel feeding the flames turned the aircraft into a giant torch. While chaos unfolded on the ground, the Ukrainian drone team was already preparing the next phase. The first drone had caused massive damage, but the operators knew Russian forces would try to save the aircraft. They immediately launched a second drone from a nearby holding pattern. This drone flew faster and lower, aiming directly for the front section of the Il-76. The Russian soldiers had no time to react. Some tried to take cover behind vehicles. Others ran toward bunkers. The Ukrainian operator guided the second drone through the smoke, using thermal imaging to see the glowing outline of the damaged aircraft. Flames were spreading across the fuselage. The operator lined up the drone with the cockpit area. The drone accelerated and struck the aircraft near the nose. Another explosion erupted, blowing out the cockpit windows. A fireball surged upward. The plane was finished. If you're still watching, don't forget to subscribe. These operations show how modern warfare is evolving, and we break it down in simple language so everyone can understand what's happening. The destruction of the Il-76 sent shockwaves through the airfield. Russian officers tried desperately to organize a response, but confusion took over. Some believed the attack came from artillery. Others thought it was a sabotage team. Only after several minutes did they realize it was drones. Meanwhile, Ukraine's surveillance drone continued circling high above, recording everything. What made the strike even more devastating was the value of the aircraft. Il-76 transport planes are essential to Russia's logistics network. They carry supplies, equipment, troops, and heavy machinery across long distances. Losing even one of them is a major setback. But losing one on the runway, where it could have been taking off, sends a powerful message: nowhere is safe. As the fire burned, the airfield's emergency crews fought desperately to contain the flames. Foam trucks sprayed chemical retardant across the wreckage. Firefighters battled the inferno for nearly an hour, but by the time the sun began to rise, the aircraft was nothing more than a twisted, blackened skeleton. Its wings had melted. The cockpit was destroyed. The fuselage had collapsed inward. Drone footage released later showed the entire scene in chilling detail. The crater left by the first explosion, the shattered frame of the aircraft, the scattered debris covering the runway. Russian media tried to downplay the strike, calling it a minor incident. But satellite images told the truth. An entire heavy transport aircraft had been wiped out, with 2 drones costing a fraction of its value. This operation demonstrated how dramatically the battlefield has changed. Ukraine used inexpensive drones, precise intelligence, and skilled operators to destroy one of Russia's most important military assets. No jets were needed. No missiles were required. Just tactical planning, patience, and accuracy. And as the war continues, operations like this show that Russia's biggest weapons can be destroyed by Ukraine's smallest. Drones have become the great equalizer of modern conflict. They slip past radar. They fly low. They strike with incredible precision. And they cost almost nothing compared to the damage they can inflict. If you want more cinematic breakdowns like this one, make sure you subscribe. We bring clear, simple, accurate content that explains every moment of this war in a way everyone can understand.